Hello, hi, and welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today I sort of wanted to make an update to a situation I've talked about in one of my previous videos. I made a video a while ago where I basically just talked about P5X's global release and what could affect it. But since then, a lot has happened. There have been so many developments, so I just wanted to talk about it. Okay, so what did I talk about last time? Basically, I was just discussing what factors could affect the release of P5X's global version. I talked about how the devs previously planned for global and JP to release at the same time, but I also mentioned how recent voice acting strikes could have affected the game's release date. My conclusion was that if P5X started voice recording before the strikes began, then it would release earlier than we anticipated. But if P5X's voice recording was affected in any way by the strikes, it could lead to the game's release being delayed. Alright then, what has changed since I last made my video? Well, P5X's JP version has gone through a lot of developments. Since the stream at Tokyo Games Show, JP went through an entire closed beta test. People were randomly selected to test out the Japanese version of P5X. The people who got selected actually got to play this version of the game for a couple of days. This version of the game was very polished. From what I was seeing, it was pretty much finished. After the beta finished, the devs hosted a survey for the closed beta test to see what they needed to improve, but that was it. After this, the JP devs created an official Discord server for P5X, and they started to offer a way for players to pre-register for the Japanese version of P5X. I've also heard that the devs are planning on doing another closed beta test for JP, but I couldn't find a source for that, so you'll have to take that with a grain of salt. Lastly, during some financial results, it was officially announced that Sega will be publishing the Japanese version of Persona 5X. They also announced that Sega is planning to release the game at the beginning of 2025. I am making this video in January 2025, so that means that JP is very close. The development is pretty much over now. All we need is a release date. And that's all of the developments with P5X's release since I last made my previous video. Now you may be thinking, wow, JP has had so many developments. Okay, so surely they have said something, literally anything about global, right? Yeah, you're starting to see the problem. JP has gone through so many developments and it's literally ready to be released. And there still hasn't been a peep from Global's development. I originally thought Global was going to be announced at the Game Awards, but as you know, that never happened. I really hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I can't help but feel just a little frustrated that Global seems to be so far behind in development when compared to JP. I feel like this is a bad sign that Global could be delayed even further. This would be terrible because the already long update gap would be even longer. This would have ruined the experience for many players since they would need to wait so long to get updates that other versions are already getting. I really doubt the developers would make a third update gap between the servers. If you don't know, there is a 1-week update gap between CN and KR/TW. If JP releases without Global, then there would be a second update gap between KR/TW and JP. Then if Global releases after JP, there would be a third update gap between JP and Global. This is bad for multiple reasons. First, it's a terrible business practice. I'm sure the devs are already aware of this. Second, it's going to lead to a terrible experience for the player base, which could lead to player counts slowly dropping over time. The developers of P5X are usually very smart with their decisions, so it seems very out of character for them to do something this dumb. To be honest, they are already in a pretty bad situation at the moment with JP and Global. In my opinion, they can only alleviate the situation instead of fully fixing it. Alright, enough with the pessimism. There was actually a positive development with Global. About a week ago, the website for P5X Global started to show users a 403 error. Now, if you are new to Persona announcements or you don't know anything about websites, this may just seem like useless information. But this error is actually a sign that the developers of the website are configuring it. This means that developers are preparing for the website to start being used, which points to an announcement very soon. This exact situation has actually happened with Persona 3 Reload and Persona 5 Tactica before their releases. Before they were announced, the websites p3re.jp and p5t.jp were showing similar activity from the developers. Then, shortly after that, the games were officially announced at an Xbox showcase. So what does this mean? It means that an announcement for Global P5X is pretty close, but it also made me realize how Global could potentially be released way earlier than we expect. I know my Debbie Downer tangent from earlier may have made you think the game is like years off, but wait, hear me out for a second. I'm gonna preface by saying this really quickly. What I'm about to say is purely speculation, so there's a high chance I may be incorrect. I'm just trying to make sense out of a situation that is really confusing me, but still hear me out. As I stated in my previous video, I was very confused at what was being developed for P5X. Obviously, they aren't working on new in-game content since the game is literally already out. So are they only working on translation into multiple languages and English voice acting? For Global's development, I believe that's the case. That's why it seems that JP is already so far ahead compared to Global. P5X is already translated into Japanese in existing versions of the game, so what are the JP devs working on? When I thought of this, a realization came to my head. What if the JP development was focused on the server side of things, while Global's development was focused on translating the game into other languages? This realization suddenly made a lot of things make sense, and I came up with an outline that would lead to Global and JP releasing at the same time like the devs originally planned. Okay, let me actually explain my reasoning because I sound like a crazy person right now. Okay, so about what I said about JP, I think that their development is focusing on configuring the game servers for JP and Global since P5X is already translated into Japanese. But why are they even doing this? I think they're doing this because the devs are expecting a way bigger player base for these versions of the games, at least compared to CNTW and KR. So while the JP team is focusing on servers, the Global dev team now has the chance to catch up with JP and translate the game into different languages and finish the voice recordings. Since JP already did the closed beta test for them, Global doesn't need to do it, they can just focus on the translation process. If this is the situation that is really happening, then it could eventually lead to JP and Global releasing at the same time. The devs announced that P5X JP was releasing in early 2025, this means January to April. P5X originally released in April of 2024 for CN, KR, and TW, so the JP devs could plan to release JP exactly 1 year after these versions of the game. But April 2025 also sounds like a reasonable time for Global to release. But Global and JP releasing in March or maybe even February doesn't sound too far-fetched either. Yes, the update gap is still going to be long, but there is nothing they can do about that anymore. At the very least, there will only be one extra update release gap between all of the servers instead of the two that would happen if JP and Global released at separate times. I really think that this is the only way for the devs to alleviate this problem that they are already in, aka this is the best case scenario for the P5X Global release, but I still think there's a small possibility for JP releasing before Global, and that actually scares me. But there's one last thing that I quickly want to mention. Is there any way that the devs can actually fix the update gap problem? I'm not sure, but thinking about this made me remember a certain anomaly that happened at the Korean and Taiwanese versions of P5X. In November, KR and TW had a rerun of S-Moko in response to Haru Okumura dropping for the first time. Many people originally skipped S-Moko because she was useless when she first dropped, but now that Haru was out, S-Moko basically became her best friend in a team comp. So the devs decided to rerun her banner so the players could get this character for their Haru teams. Well, you may be thinking, okay, but why are you mentioning this? Well, I forgot to mention that this rerun was completely absent from the Chinese server. This is the one and only time that this has ever happened. When this first happened, there's a lot of confusion about the situation, but the first thought that came to my head was, wait, what if this is a test? Okay, let me elaborate on that. I thought that this rerun was an experiment from the devs to see how players would react to server-exclusive reruns. Okay, well, how is this even important? Well, I thought that the devs could use this system with Global so that they can catch up with at least KR and TW, or at least make the update gap way shorter. They could do this by maybe releasing a batch of 3 to 4 new characters every month in a single banner, as a way to slowly over time eliminate the update gap. Sort of like that special premium banner that just allowed you to choose multiple characters at once, but just way smaller. This is honestly the only way I can see the devs fixing this unfixable problem. Now, do I think it will really happen? To be honest, no. I really doubt the system would be received well by the players. It could lead to global players not having enough resources to pull for these characters while having such a small time limit. It could also lead to some controversy from the existing players of P5X. I only really brought this up because it's the only way that this update gap issue can be fixed. It could work if the devs execute it way better than how I explained it, but it was just a shower thought that I wanted to bring up. Alright, well, that's all I really wanted to chat about today. Even though I was a bit negative in parts of the video, I still really hope for the best case scenario. I really hope that Global is announced and released soon, so let's all hope for the best. What are your guys' thoughts on this entire situation? Was there anything I missed? Please leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this pretty confusing situation. Well, I think that's all I got for today, so thanks for watching. Bye!